Tonight, our journey takes us across the sea to the ancient harbour of Egypt to gaze up at the guiding flame of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. But first, come in. Come in from the damp and the dark. Shut the heavy door behind you. It is warm in here, the fire is steady, and you are completely safe. The book for tonight rests on the reading desk. It is bound in smooth white leather, cool like marble. Let us open the cover and find the first page. Our story begins. To understand the light, we must first understand the darkness that necessitated it. Imagine, if you will, a world without the guiding star of the Pharos. We are drifting back through the currents of time, past the modern harbours and the electric glow of the 20th century, floating all the way back to the 4th century before the Common Era. The Mediterranean Sea is a vast, breathing entity, a basin of deep indigo waters that has cradled civilization since the dawn of memory. But here on the southern rim, where the great Mother Nile pours her silt-laden heart into the salt water, the coast was a treacherous phantom. In these ancient nights, before the white stone rose to touch the clouds, the approach to Egypt was a journey into a void. Close your eyes and feel the humidity rising. It is a thick, heavy moisture that clings to your skin, carrying the scent of ancient mud, rotting reeds, and the fecund, earthy perfume of the delta. For a sailor navigating these waters under a moonless sky, there was no horizon. The separation between the Black Sea and the black sky dissolved completely. There were no cliffs to break the waves, no towering mountains to silhouette against the stars. The land here was flat, devastatingly low, a marsh's edge that sat barely above the waterline. Ships would glide through the obsidian night, their captains straining to see, eyes stinging from the salt spray and the exhaustion of the watch. And often the realization of land came too late. It came not with a visual warning, but with the sickening, grinding sound of a wooden hull tearing against a hidden sandbank. The low coast, they called it. It was a graveyard of keels and ribs, where the heavy silence was broken only by the snapping of timber and the cries of men swallowed by the shallows. The water here was murky, thickened by the runoff of the African interior, hiding the treacherous shoals that shifted like sleeping serpents beneath the surface. This was the gate to Egypt, invisible, silent, and deadly, a place where the ocean did not crash against the land, but rather seeped into it, a blurred boundary of wet sand and salt marshes, where the ibis stalked in the gloom and the crocodile slept in the cool mud. Listen closely now. Can you hear the difference in the water? Out in the deep Mediterranean, the waves have a rhythmic, heavy rolling sound, a deep, resonant boom as they collapse upon themselves. But here, as we approach this invisible shore, the sound changes. It becomes a hiss, a long, sibilant whisper of foam sliding over miles of flat limestone and packed sediment. It is the sound of the sea meeting the Tar-Mehu, the land of the papyrus. This coast was guarded by a chaotic geography of lagoons and salt pans. The limestone ridge that ran parallel to the shore was the only solid spine in a body of water and sand. Before the city of Alexandria existed, this place was home only to the wind and the birds. Imagine standing on that limestone ridge in the dark. The ground beneath your sandals is rough, pockmarked by millennia of wind erosion, sharp and cool to the touch. To your left, the endless dark of the open sea. To your right, the stagnant metallic smell of Lake Mariotis. The wind here does not howl, it moans, passing through the tall, dry reeds that line the brackish waters. It creates a soft, flute-like whistling, a lonely song that has been playing for thousands of years. There were tiny villages here, yes. Rakotis, a humble settlement of fishermen and goat herders. Can you smell their small fires? The scent of burning dried dung and fish grilling over smoky embers drifts faintly on the breeze, instantly swallowed by the vastness of the night air. These people knew the secrets of the shallows. They knew how to read the ripples in the water that indicated a submerged rock. But for the great galleys of the Greeks and the Phoenicians, this coast was a terrifying blank space on the map of the world. And sitting just off this flat, dangerous coast, like a fragmented bone separated from the skeleton of the continent, lay a small, elongated island. It was narrow, craggy, and surrounded by jagged rocks that broke the incoming waves into a froth of white lace. It had no palace. It had no great temple. It was merely a resting place for seals and seabirds, washed clean by the salt spray, waiting for a destiny that was dreaming its way toward it. The year is 332. The air in the tent is warm and still, saturated with the rich, resinous scent of frankincense and the sharp, metallic tang of polished bronze armor resting on a stand. The heavy linen flaps of the pavilion are closed, shutting out the campfires of the Macedonian army, shutting out the sands of Egypt, creating a womb of silence for the man who sleeps within. Alexander, the Golden One. He is young, his hair a tangle of sweat-dampened curls against the pillow, his chest rising and falling in the slow, deep rhythm of exhaustion. He has conquered worlds, marched across deserts and unraveled knots that baffled the wise, but tonight he is merely a traveller adrift in the realm of Morpheus. The linen sheets are cool against his heated skin. Outside, the faint stamping of a horse or the clinking of a sentry's spear provides a distant anchor to reality. But Alexander is drifting far away. In the haze of his slumber, the darkness behind his eyes begins to shift. It turns a soft, misty grey, like the fog that rolls off the Aegean in the early morning, and from this mist a figure emerges. He is old, ancient as the earth itself, with a beard like foaming waterfalls and eyes that do not see the physical world, but peer deeply into the soul of things. It is Homer, the poet, the weaver of tales. Alexander feels a sense of awe, a trembling in his dreaming heart. He has carried the scroll of the Iliad under his pillow since boyhood, a talisman more precious than his sword, and now the ghost of the poet stands at the foot of his bed. The old man does not shout, he does not command. He leans forward, his presence radiating a scent of old parchment and sea brine, and he whispers. His voice is like the dry rustle of leaves in an autumn wind, rasping yet melodic. He recites lines that Alexander knows, yet hears now with a new, piercing clarity. Now, there is an island in the heavy wash of the open sea. The voice hangs in the air, shimmering, in front of Egypt, and they call it Pharos. Pharos, the word lands in Alexander's mind like a stone dropped into a still pool, sending ripples outward. Pharo, and it has a harbour with good anchorage from where they put out to sea. The vision fades. The grey mist dissolves into the golden light of the Egyptian dawn, bleeding through the fabric of the tent. Alexander's eyes snap open. He does not wake with a start, but with a certainty. The confusion of the night is gone. He can feel the residual echo of the dream in his bones, a vibrating command from the ancestors. He sits up, the wooden frame of his bed creaking softly. He swings his legs over the side, his feet touching the woven rugs of the tent floor. He runs a hand over his face, feeling the grit of the desert, but his mind is seeing water. He is seeing the limestone ridge, he is seeing the small, jagged island that protects the bay. He knows exactly where he must go. He knows that the flat, invisible, dangerous coast needs an eye. It needs a marker. It needs a city that will bridge the world of the Nile and the world of the sea. The poet has spoken, and the king has listened. The silence of the dark coast is about to end. To build a mountain, one must first understand the earth that will hold it. Before the first block of white stone could be laid, there was the problem of the water. We must turn our gaze to the strip of sea that separated the mainland from the dream. Let us float above the scene for a moment, suspended in the warm, salt-heavy air of the 4th century. Below us lies the island of Pharos. In these early days, it was not a place of majesty. It was a raw, rugged splinter of the earth's crust, barely a rock in the churning sea. Imagine stepping onto its surface before the architects arrived. The ground is uneven, a chaotic jumble of calcified limestone and sandstone ridges that tear at the soles of your sandals. It is a lonely place. The wind here is relentless, stripping away any softness, leaving only the hard, bleached bones of the rock. The air smells intensely of drying kelp and the sharp, acrid scent of seabird guano. Gulls and terns cloak the rocks in shifting clouds of white and grey. Their cries are piercing, dissonant music that competes with the crashing of the surf. There were no straight lines here. Nature does not build in perfect angles. There were only jagged edges, slippery with green algae, where the Mediterranean threw itself against the stone in a spray of cold mist. For centuries this island had been nothing more than a shelter for goat herders seeking refuge from a storm, or a hiding place for pirates watching the trade routes. It was a wild thing, untamed, disconnected from the pulse of human civilization. It sat there, a mile from the shore, tantalizingly close, yet separated by a stretch of water that was deep enough to drown a man and treacherous enough to wreck a keel. But the vision of Alexander and the Ptolemies who succeeded him did not tolerate separation. To build the greatest harbour the world had ever seen, the island had to be leashed. It had to be bound to the city, and so began the construction of the Stadion, the 7 Stadia. Close your eyes and listen to the change in the soundscape. The lonely cry of the gulls is slowly replaced by a low rhythmic thrumming. It is the sound of human industry. It is the sound of 1,000 wooden piles being driven into the seabed. Thud, thud, thud. The ambitious plan was to build a causeway, a massive bridge of earth and stone, stretching 7 stadia, nearly 1 mile, across the open water. It was an act of defiance against the ocean. Picture the workers, thousands of them, their skin bronzed by the relentless Egyptian sun, shining with sweat and oil. They are the ants of this great hill. They carry baskets of rubble, heavy stones and timber. The air is thick with the smell of wet mortar, unwashed bodies, and the swampy, sulphuric odour of the disturbed seabed. Day after day, year after year, they pour the debris of the land into the water. Watch as the dark blue of the channel is slowly strangled by a growing finger of brown and grey. Large limestone boulders are rolled off flat-bottomed barges with a tremendous splash, sending geysers of salt water into the air. The water churns, muddy and confused, as the foundation rises from the depths. This was not just a road. It was a scar that healed the separation between the continent and the island. As the mole extended, it did something magical to the water. It calmed the chaotic currents. By slicing the bay in two, it created 2 distinct harbours, the great harbour to the east and the harbour of Eunostos, the harbour of safe return, to the west. Walk with me now along the unfinished surface of the Stadion. It is wide, nearly 600 feet across, a man-made spine of earth. The ground beneath your feet feels solid, yet if you stand still, you can feel the faint vibration of the sea battering against the sides, a Reminder that we are walking where fish once swam. The wind whips your robes, but you can walk from the noise of the city streets straight to the silence of the island without ever wetting your feet. The wild rock of Pharos has been tethered. The stage is set. Now the stage needs its actor. The causeway is built. The island is waiting. But where is the tower? It begins not by the sea, but far away, in the dust and heat of the quarries. We must travel east across the river to the limestone hills of Tura and the granite quarries of Aswan. Here the air is dry, so dry it cracks the lips and parches the throat. It is a world of blinding whiteness. The sun reflects off the sheer faces of the limestone cliffs with such intensity that it is painful to keep your eyes open. Listen to the music of the stone. Clink, clink, clink. It is a high-pitched metallic song, the sound of bronze and iron chisels biting into the ancient bedrock. The quarrymen are covered in a fine white powder, ghost-like figures moving in the haze of their own making. They are cutting the skin of the lighthouse. These are not small bricks. These are cyclopean blocks, massive cubes of stone weighing tons. Feel the rough texture of the unfinished limestone under your fingertips, cool despite the heat of the day, powdery, filled with the tiny fossils of creatures that lived millions of years ago when this desert was a sea. The logistics of movement are a slow, grinding ballet. Can you hear the groaning of the ropes? Thick hawsers made of papyrus and hemp stretch to their breaking point. Creak, snap, groan. Sledges of heavy timber slide over rollers lubricated with water and grease, carrying the massive weight of the blocks down to the river barges. The smell here is distinct. It is the smell of friction, burning wood, hot stone, and the earthy musk of the oxen that pull the loads. The blocks are loaded onto wide, flat barges that sink low into the water under the burden. They float down the Nile, a procession of white mountains moving silently through the green reeds. They navigate the canals, passing through the lock gates until finally they taste the salt of the harbour. Imagine the arrival at the island of Pharos. The barges bump against the wooden jetties with a hollow thud. The white stone cut from the dry desert cliffs now glistens with the spray of the Mediterranean. It is a meeting of elements, earth and water, preparing to birth fire. The blocks are unloaded, stacked in vast waiting yards on the island. They sit there, silent and heavy, waiting for the masons to give them their final shape. They are the raw potential of the light. At night, under the moon, the piles of white stone glow softly, a ghostly premonition of the tower that will soon rise from this very spot to scratch the belly of the heavens. The foundation is laid, the materials are gathered, the dream is about to become stone. To reach the heavens, one must first make a pact with the earth. And so, The great lighthouse began not with a soar toward the clouds, but with a heaviness, a grounding, a refusal to move. We are standing now at the foot of the structure, years into the construction. The air here is turbulent. The sea, frustrated by the new barrier of the Stadion, swirls around the edges of the island with a vengeful energy. The spray is constant, a fine, salty mist that coats your lips and stiffens your hair within minutes. But here, rising from the jagged bedrock of Pharos, sits the first tier. It is a perfect square, a cube of defiance. Visualize the sheer mass of it, 100 feet long on each side, rising 100 feet into the air. It is a mountain carved by geometry. The walls are not vertical. They slope inward ever so slightly, a tapering batter that gives the structure the appearance of rooting itself deeper into the ground with every inch of height. It feels immovable. It feels like it has been here since the creation of the world. Walk up to the wall. The white limestone blocks are blinding under the Egyptian sun, but up close you can see the veins of the earth within them. They are smooth to the touch, polished by the wind, yet massive beyond comprehension. There is no mortar here, no simple mud or clay to bind these giants together. The sea would eat such things in a season. Instead, listen to the memory of the construction. Hiss, sizzle, snap. To bind these stones against the fury of the earthquake and the battering ram of the waves, the architects used molten lead. Imagine the smell. Acrid, metallic, heavy fumes rising into the hot air as cauldrons of liquid grey metal were poured into channels cut between the blocks. The lead flowed like water, filling the joints, then cooled and hardened, gripping the stone clamps with an unbreakable fist. It allowed the tower to sway just a fraction of an inch, to breathe with the tremors of the earth without cracking. It was a skeleton of metal hidden within the flesh of stone. Stand at the corner of the square bays facing the sea. The waves crash against the lower courses. Boom, sending tremors through the soles of your feet. But the tower does not shudder. It absorbs the blow. It turns the chaos of the water into the stillness of stone. This square base was the house of the workers, the storage for the fuel, the ramp that spiraled inward like a shell. It was the body of the beast, solid and unyielding, holding the weight of the glory that was yet to come. High above the crashing waves on the seaward-facing wall of this great square, a wooden scaffold creaks in the wind. It is a precarious perch, suspended by ropes and timber against the blinding white face of the masonry. Here stands a man. His name is Sostratos of Cnidus. He is not a king. He is not a pharaoh. He is an architect, a man of mathematics and angles, a man who speaks the language of tension and compression. His beard is dusted with white powder. His hands are calloused and rough, stained with the tools of his trade. He looks at the smooth, vast canvas of the stone wall, and he feels the ache of mortality. The king, Ptolemy II, has paid for this stone. The king has commanded that this tower be a symbol of his power, his benevolence. But Sostratos knows the truth. A king signs the decree, but an architect bleeds for the design. The mind that conceived this miracle, the heart that worried over the foundation in the dark of night, that belongs to Sostratos. Listen to the sound of his rebellion. Tink, tink, tink. It is the delicate, rhythmic tapping of a chisel against the hardest stone. Sostratos is not carving into the soft limestone of the facing blocks. He has chosen a plaque of hard, dark granite to embed within the wall. He works slowly, methodically, shielded by the canvas drapes of the scaffold, so no eyes from below can see his secret work. He carves deep. He wants these letters to catch the shadows. He wants them to survive the wind that erodes mountains. Sostratos. The dust puffs out with each strike, smelling of flint and spark. Cnidus, son of Dexiphans. He pauses, wiping the sweat from his brow, looking out at the endless blue horizon. He is writing a letter to the future. The Saviour God. For sale. He runs his fingers over the inscription. It is sharp, deep, and permanent. It is the truth. It is an acknowledgement that this light does not belong to a crown, but to the desperate sailor praying for home, and to the genius who built the path for him. Sostratos smiles, a small private curving of the lips. He has carved his name into eternity, but he knows he cannot let the king see it, not yet. And now comes the layer of silence, the layer of deceit. The inscription of Sostratos stands bold and dark against the wall, but the dedication ceremony is approaching. The king will arrive with his entourage of priests and generals. He will look up, and he must see his own glory reflected in the stone. Sostratos orders the mixing of the plaster. Can you smell it? The wet, chalky, swamp-like scent of lime and water, mixed with fine marble dust to give it a glistening sheen. It is a heavy, thick paste in the buckets. The masons take their trowels, slap, scrape, smooth. With long, sweeping strokes they cover the deep granite letters. They fill the grooves of Sostratos. They bury the son of Dexiphanes. The truth disappears under a layer of white, wet, artificial stone. The surface is smoothed until it is flawless, indistinguishable from the blocks around it. And then, into this soft, yielding plaster, they carve a new name, King Ptolemy. It is easy work. The plaster accepts the chisel without resistance. It is a soft material for a soft ego. The letters are painted with gold, shining brilliantly in the sun. When the king arrives, he looks up and sees his name blazing like the sun itself, claiming the tower, claiming the light, claiming the safety of every ship. He is pleased. The people cheer. Sostratos stands in the shadow of a column, silent, his hands folded within his sleeves. He is patient. He knows something the king does not. He knows the nature of the wind on the coast of Pharos. He knows that the wind here carries invisible teeth, grains of sand and salt that chew at everything they touch. He knows that plaster, no matter how thick, is skin, not bone. He projects his mind forward, past his own death, past the death of the king. He sees the centuries unspooling like a rope. He hears the wind howling for 100 winters, 1,000 storms. Hiss, scour, peel. Slowly, inevitably, the plaster begins to crack. The gold paint flakes away, drifting down into the sea like dead leaves. The soft lime erodes, grain by grain, washed away by the rains and the spray. The name of the king blurs. The Ptolemy softens, fades, and dissolves into dust. And there, beneath the ruined mask, the hard granite waits. The truth waits as the false skin falls away. The deep, sharp letters of the architect emerge once more, untouched by time. Sostratos knew that the present belongs to the powerful, but the future belongs to the stone. He covered the truth with plaster so that it might be revealed only when the world was ready to remember who really held the light. We have admired the white skin of the tower, and we have uncovered the secrets etched into its bones. Now we must enter the body itself. We must leave the blinding glare of the Mediterranean sun and step through the colossal bronze doors at the base. Cross the threshold. The first thing that hits you is the temperature. It is a sudden, shocking drop. The heat of the Egyptian day is severed instantly, replaced by a deep, resonant coolness. It is the chill of a cave, the temperature of the earth's deep interior. The air here is still, heavy with the scent of stone dust and old shadows. The roar of the sea, which was deafening only a moment ago, is now muffled, reduced to a dull, rhythmic thumping against the outer walls, like the heartbeat of a sleeping leviathan. You are standing in the atrium of the square base. It is a cavernous space, vast enough to hold a temple, but it is not empty. Rising before you, disappearing into the gloom of the upper reaches, is the marvel of the interior, the ramp. This was not a staircase. Stairs are for men, and men are weak. Men tire. Men cannot carry the weight of a star on their backs. This was a road a gentle, spiraling highway built inside the shell of the lighthouse. It was wide enough for 2 carts to pass each other without their axles touching. Walk with me up this incline. The floor is paved with rough-hewn stone to provide traction. The slope is incredibly subtle, a masterpiece of engineering designed to deceive the legs. You are ascending a mountain, but it feels as though you are merely walking a long hallway. The walls curve around you, a never-ending embrace of masonry. Spiral, spiral, spiral. There are windows, narrow slits cut deep into the 6-foot-thick walls. They act as lungs for the tower, pulling in shafts of dusty sunlight that slice through the darkness like golden swords. In these beams of light, you can see millions of dust motes dancing, suspended in the quiet air. As you walk, you pass through pools of light and stretches of shadow, a hypnotic flickering that disorients the senses. You lose track of direction. Are you facing the sea? Are you facing the city? It does not matter. There is only the path upward. This is the intestine of the beast, the digestive tract that processes the fuel of the earth to create the fire of the sky. Listen, do you hear it? Click, clack, click, clack. It is the sound of the heartbeat of the Pharos. It comes from ahead, echoing down the stone spiral. It is the sound of hooves. The lighthouse was not merely a statue, it was a machine, and its engine was made of muscle and blood. Here, in the eternal twilight of the ramp, lived the beasts of burden, donkeys mostly, sturdy grey-flanked creatures with eyes that held the patience of the desert, sometimes oxen, for the heavier loads, their massive shoulders brushing against the limestone walls. They move in a trance. Watch them as they pass. Their heads are low, bobbing in time with their steps. They do not need to be whipped. They know the way. They have walked this spiral 1,000 times. It is their entire world. To them, the universe is not a horizon of blue water, but an endless curving tunnel of grey stone. Smell the change in the air as they approach. The cool mineral scent of the tower is overlaid with the warm, musky odour of animal fur, the tang of leather harnesses, and the faint grassy smell of dung. It is an earthy, farm-like smell, strangely out of place in this palace of science. There is a rhythm to their movement that is almost musical. The creaking of the wicker baskets strapped to their flanks, the soft jingle of a bronze bell on a leader's collar, the heavy, wet sound of their breathing, huff, 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 echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Alongside them walk the drovers. These men are the silent priests of the ramp. They walk with a slow, rolling gait, matched to the animals. They rarely speak. In this acoustic chamber, a shout would be a thunderclap. So they communicate in whispers and touches, a hand on a donkey's flank, a low whistle, a soft to urge the line forward. They are caught in a perpetual loop. Up and down, ascension and descent. The loaded beasts climb the gentle slope, their muscles bunching and releasing, carrying the lifeblood of the light. The empty beasts descend, their hooves clattering a little faster, eager for the water troughs at the base. It is a double helix of life, a continuous ribbon of motion that ensures the tower never sleeps. And what is this burden that requires such an endless procession? What is the weight that presses down on the wooden saddles? It is the fuel. The hunger of the Pharos was insatiable. To keep a fire burning 350 feet in the air, a fire bright enough to be seen for 30 miles, requires a forest. Look into the passing baskets. Here lies the wealth of the Nile's vegetation. Bundles of dried acacia wood, brittle and thorny, harvested from the desert fringes. Thick logs of sycamore, but wood alone burns too fast, too clean. The light needs substance. It needs to cling to the air. So there are baskets filled with roots, dense fibrous knots that burn slow and hot. There are clay jars sealed with wax, sloshing with heavy oils, and most precious of all, there are bundles of resin. Smell it as the caravan passes, a sharp, pine-like fragrance, sweet and sticky, that cuts through the animal musk. It is the tears of trees gathered to be sacrificed to the flame. This is the endless chain. From the moment the sun sets until the moment it rises, this river of fuel must flow upwards against gravity. If the donkeys stop, the light dies. If the drovers sleep, the ships crash. Imagine the physics of this duty. We are rising higher now. We have walked for what feels like miles, winding around the central core. The air is getting thinner, perhaps. No, just staler. The weight of the stone above us is lessening, but the psychological weight is increasing. We are far from the earth now. We are 100 feet up, 200 feet. The ramp begins to tighten. The breathing of the animals becomes louder, more labored. The echo is shorter, sharper. We are nearing the top of the square base. The great, endless spiral is about to end, depositing its cargo onto the lifting platforms of the next tier. But for now, just watch the bundles of wood passing by your face. Rough bark, peeling skin, the raw material of light. It has travelled from the deep interior of Africa, floated down the Nile, crossed the lake, and is now taking its final journey towards the clouds. It is a solemn procession. The wood is about to be transformed. The animals are the carriers of this transmutation. In the dim light of the ramp, the donkeys look like ghosts, and the bundles of wood on their backs look like offerings. We are climbing the throat of the god, carrying the food that will make him speak. We have ascended the spiral of the heavy square base, walking in the dim, dust-filled twilight of the ramp. We have breathed the musk of the donkeys and felt the crushing weight of the limestone pressing in from all sides. But now the path changes, the ramp ends. We step out of the enclosed artery and into the realm of the sky. Welcome to the transition. We are now standing on the great terrace atop the first tier, over 200 feet above the crashing waves. The air here is different. Can you feel it? It is violent and pure. It rips at your robe, snatching the breath from your lungs. It smells of nothing but ozone and salt, a scouring purity that wipes away the earthy scent of the animals below. Raise your eyes. Before us stands the second tier. The architecture has transformed. We have left the stability of the square, the shape of the earth, the shape of the box, and we have entered the domain of the Octagon. It is an 8-sided tower shooting upward another 100 feet. Why 8 sides? Close your eyes and feel the wind pushing against your chest. The Greeks knew the winds not as shapeless forces, but as gods. Boreas from the north, cold and sharp. Notos from the south, wet and heavy. Zephyrus from the west. A square wall fights the wind, takes the blow flat against its face. But an octagon slices it. It is aerodynamic perfection. The wind whistles around the corners, sliding off the angled faces of the white stone like water off a duck's back. This section of the tower is thinner, more elegant. It is the neck of the lighthouse. Touch the stone here. It feels colder than the base. It is constantly bathed in the moisture of the clouds. If you were to press your ear against these 8 walls, you would hear a high-pitched singing, the vibration of the wind shearing against the masonry. It is a lonely sound, a song of isolation. We are no longer part of the land. We are an island in the air, a geometric needle threading the chaotic fabric of the storm. But we are not alone on this windy precipice. Look to the corners of the terrace, where the square base creates a platform for the octagon to rise. There, standing sentinel at the 4 compass points, are the Watchers. They are the Tritons. They are massive, cast in bronze that has been polished to a mirror sheen. In the daylight, they burn like golden fires. In the moonlight, they are black silhouettes against the stars. Half man, half fish, their coiled tails lash against the stone pedestals, their muscular torsos twisted in exertion. They are not silent statues. They are the trumpeters of the abyss. Each Triton holds a great conch shell to his lips, the kochlos, and they are waiting. Legend whispers that they were more than art. They were engines. Imagine the terrified awe of a sailor approaching the harbour in a thick fog. He cannot see the light. He cannot see the shore. But then, rolling over the dark waves comes a sound. Blur. A deep, mournful, resonant note shaking the very timber of the ship's hull. Was it the wind channeled through the bronze shells? Was it a steam-driven mechanism hidden in the stone beneath their fins? We can only guess, but imagine the sound of that bronze trumpet mixing with the howl of the gale. It is a sound of warning, a voice that says, "I am here. The rock is here. Turn away or be broken." Stand next to one of these bronze giants. Smell the metallic tang of the alloy, copper and tin, oxidizing slowly in the sea air. Reach out and touch the cold metal of the Triton's arm. It vibrates, it hums with the energy of the tower. These are the heralds of the Pharos, the mythological beasts tamed and frozen in metal to serve the safety of the trade routes. They are the bridge between the monsters of the deep and the science of the city. And speaking of science, we must look higher. The Pharos was not just a building. It was a clockwork brain. It was the child of Alexandria, the city of mathematicians and engineers. The stones were laid by brute force, yes, but the soul of the tower was built by the mechanic. Scattered around the octagonal terrace and perhaps perched on the cornices above are the automata. These are the uncanny ones. They are statues of women draped in flowing bronze robes that move without flesh. Watch the one facing the east. She stands on a delicate pedestal of marble. As the sun crests the horizon, painting the sea in strokes of violet and orange, she begins to move. Click, whir, click. A slow, grinding rotation of gears hidden deep within her plinth. Her arm is raised, a bronze finger pointing endlessly outward. She is tethered to the sun. Throughout the long arc of the day, she turns imperceptibly. If you stare at her, she is still, but if you look away and look back an hour later, she has shifted. She tracks the chariot of Helios across the sky. When the sun is high at noon, she points straight up. When it sinks into the western waters, her arm drops, following the dying light. She is the timekeeper of the heavens, a machine that mimics devotion. And there is another, a figure that does not track the light, but the invisible, the wind reader. It is a delicate mechanism, perhaps a winged figure, balanced on a pin of hardened iron. It is sensitive to the slightest breath of air. While the stone tower stands rigid, this figure dances. It twirls, erratic and lively, pointing its face always into the teeth of the wind. Imagine the soundscape here on the terrace. The whistling of the wind against the octagon, the deep, mournful drone of the Tritons, and underneath it all, the faint, rhythmic ticking of the automata. Tick, tock, clink. It is the sound of intelligence. It is the sound of humans trying to measure the infinite. Here, suspended between the sea and the stars, we are surrounded by bronze eyes that watch the horizon and bronze fingers that point the way. The magic of the Pharos is not sorcery. It is the terrifying precision of gears turning in the dark, reading the wind and the sun long after the engineers who built them have turned to dust. We have left the realm of the earth in the square base, and we have navigated the realm of the winds in the octagon. Now we must ascend to the final threshold. We are climbing the very spine of the sky, moving past the bronze trumpeters, past the pointing fingers of the automata, up into the thinnest, purest air. We reach the third tier, the cylinder. The geometry shifts one last time. We have gone from the four corners of the material world to the 8 directions of the wind, and now we arrive at the circle, the shape of the sun, the shape of the moon, the shape of eternity. Here, at an altitude of nearly 350 feet, the tower sheds its walls. The solid masonry dissolves into a ring of pillars. It is a tholos, a round temple open to the heavens. Stand here for a moment and feel the terrifying exposure. There is no glass. There are no shutters. There is only a colonnade of granite pillars, red as dried blood, supporting the dome above. The wind here is no longer a gust. It is a permanent presence, a physical weight that leans against you. If you were to step between the pillars, there is nothing but the long, terrifying drop into the churning white foam of the sea miles below. The ships down there look like floating splinters. The great city of Alexandria is reduced to a grid of white pebbles. You are standing in the crown of the world. The floor beneath your feet is hot, not warm, but hot. The stone radiates a feverish intensity that seeps through the soles of your sandals. The air tastes of burning, not the comfortable smell of a hearth, but a sharp chemical acridity, the smell of boiling pitch, melting resin, and charring hard wood. Above us, the granite pillars rise to support a conical roof, topped by the statue of Zeus the Saviour, but our eyes are drawn to the centre, to the heart, to the light. Who could live in such a place? Who could endure the roaring duality of the freezing wind and the blistering fire? Meet the keepers of the flame. They are a breed apart, these men. They are not sailors, though they serve the sea. They are not priests, though they tend a god. Look at their faces in the flickering orange glow. Their skin is a map of their trade. It is leathery, cured by the salt and the smoke, lined deep around the eyes from years of squinting into the blinding brilliance. Their hands are permanently stained with soot, the creases of their palms etched in black carbon. They wear heavy tunics of wool and leather, soaked in water to resist the stray sparks that dance like fireflies in the updraft. They do not speak much. The roar of the fire and the howl of the wind steal their words, so they move with a silent, practiced choreography. They live here, in small alcoves carved into the stone just below the fire chamber. They sleep in short shifts, curled up on straw mats. nights, their dreams filled with the fear of the dark. For them, darkness is the enemy. Darkness means death on the rocks below. Their internal clocks are set not by the sun, but by the fuel supply. Watch one of the keepers now. He stands on the windward side of the lantern, shielding his face with a dampened cloth. He is peering into the heart of the blaze, reading it. He knows the colour of the flame. He knows that a blue flame is too hot, eating the fuel too fast. He knows that a red, smoky flame is too weak to pierce the fog. He seeks the white-gold centre, the perfect combustion. He is a man living in the sky, suspended between the mortal world and the divine. He eats his bread dusted with ash. He drinks his water warm from the ambient heat. He is the lonely guardian of the threshold, the human component in this machine of stone and fire. He looks down at the tiny lights of the city, the banquet halls, the libraries, the lovers walking by the harbour, and he knows he is separate from them. He belongs to the fire, and the fire is a beast that must be fed. Turn your gaze to the centre of the circular colonnade. There, raised on a massive grate of iron and bronze, is the source of the light. It is a bonfire of monstrous proportions. This is not a polite flame. It is a controlled inferno. Remember the donkeys we saw hours ago, trudging up the spiral ramp? Remember the bundles of acacia, the logs of sycamore, the jars of oil? This is their destination. This is where matter is converted into safety. The feeding is continuous. It is a hunger that never ends. Crackle, pop, watch the lifting mechanism at work. A winch, groaning under the strain, pulls a heavy basket of fuel up through the floor of the lantern. The keepers move instantly. They seize the logs with long iron tongs. The wood is dense, seasoned for years in the dry desert heat to ensure it burns bright and clear. They toss the logs into the moor. The fire leaps up to meet them, a sudden surge of orange sparks swirling up into the granite dome, escaping out into the night sky like a swarm of angry bees. But wood is not enough. Wood flickers, wood wavers, to create a light that remains steady, a light that can be trusted by a captain 20 miles out at sea. The fire needs a soul of liquid. Watch as a keeper pours the tears of the trees. He holds a jar of resin, thick, amber-coloured sap collected from the forests of the distant interior. He pours it carefully over the burning logs. Hiss. The reaction is immediate. The fire does not just burn, it screams. The resin catches and the flame turns a blinding, incandescent yellow. The smell is overpowering, a dense, sweet, intoxicating perfume of frankincense and pine that floods the chamber. It is the smell of a temple sacrifice, but the offering here is not for the forgiveness of sins, but for the guidance of ships. The heat is physical. It pushes against you like a hand. The keepers must rotate constantly, turning their backs to the cold wind and their faces to the fire, then switching like meat on a spit to keep from freezing or roasting. This is the crown of the Pharos, a volatile, violent, hungry star captured and held in a cage of stone. Every flicker of this flame is bought with the sweat of the men in the quarries, the muscle of the donkeys on the ramp, and the vigilance of the soot-stained men standing here in the wind. It is a terrifying proximity to raw power. If the wind shifts suddenly, the flames lash out, licking at the granite pillars, seeking escape. But the keepers stand firm. They feed the beasts, log after log, jar after jar. They ensure that while the rest of the world sleeps in the comfort of the dark, the eye of Alexandria remains wide open, burning a hole in the night. Behind the roaring chaos of the bonfire, standing like a silent silver moon against the dark granite of the lantern, stood the secret of the Pharos. The fire was the heart of the tower, yes, feeding on the wood and the resin, but the fire was wild. It was untamed. Left to its own devices, a fire scatters its light in every direction, up into the empty stars, down onto the stone floor, back into the eyes of the keepers. To speak to the ships 30 miles away, the fire needed to be disciplined. It needed to be gathered, held, and thrown. Enter the great mirror. We are standing directly in front of it now, in the moments before the sun sets and the fire is lit. It is massive, a colossal disk of polished metal, perhaps 20 feet across, looming over us like a shield of the gods. It is not made of glass. Glass was too fragile, too dim for this purpose. This is metal, a specific alchemical alloy of copper and tin, heavy and dense, cast in the fires of the foundry and cooled slowly to prevent cracking. Reach out your hand, but do not touch it. You can feel the cold radiating from it. It is a concave surface, a perfect inward curving bowl. This was the triumph of Alexandrian mathematics. The scholars of the museum, the followers of Euclid, understood the geometry of light. They knew that a curve, if shaped with absolute precision, could take the chaotic, scattering rays of a fire and force them into parallel lines. It is a pool of quicksilver standing upright. Look into it. You do not see your face. You see a monstrous, distorted version of yourself, stretched and widened, trapped in the vortex of the curve. It is a dizzying sensation, like looking into a whirlpool of mercury. The surface is so smooth, so liquid in its perfection, that it seems to be humming with a latent energy. It is waiting to catch the photons. It is waiting to inhale the fire. But perfection in this salt-laden air is a fleeting thing. The enemy of the mirror is not the dark, it is the sea. Every minute of every day, the wind carries invisible crystals of salt up to this height. They cling to the metal, they eat at the surface, they seek to turn the brilliant silver into a dull green tarnish. If the mirror clouds, the light fails. If the light fails, the ships die. And so we witness the most delicate, the most obsessive ritual of the tower, the polishing of the bronze. It happens during the day while the fire sleeps. The sun streams through the open colonnade, blindingly bright, heating the stone floor. The keepers of the mirror approach the great disk with the reverence of priests washing a statue of a deity. Listen to the sound. Shh, shh, shh. It is the sound of soft lamb's wool moving over metal. They do not use water. Water is the enemy here. They use jars of sweet oil, olive oil mixed with the finest sifted pumice, dust so fine it feels like flour between your fingers. Smell the mixture. It is an earthy, rich scent, the smell of an old kitchen or a bathhouse, strangely out of place 300 feet in the air. The keepers dip their clothes into the oil and begin the circular motion. Rub, glisten, rub, glisten. They work in a trance. They must be gentle. A scratch on this surface is a catastrophe. A scratch would catch the light and scatter it, creating a shadow in the beam. They massage the metal, coaxing the shine out of the alloy, removing the microscopic film of oxidation that settled during the night. Their own reflections dance before them, sweat dripping from their brows, their muscles aching from the repetitive motion. They are polishing a surface that will become too hot to touch in a few hours. They are tending to the skin of the star. It is a labor of love and fear. They know that the brightness of the beam tonight depends entirely on the sweat of their palms this morning. The mirror must be flawless. It must be a liquid nothingness ready to accept the gift of the flame. Now the sun has set. The sky has turned that deep, bruising purple of the Mediterranean twilight. The fire has been lit, the resin has been poured, the blaze is roaring, a chaotic ball of orange fury. But look at what happens when that fury hits the curve. Stand behind the fire now. Look out toward the sea. The mirror catches the flames. It wraps its bronze arms around the light. And then, with the laws of physics as its bowstring, it shoots the light outward. It does not glow. It pierces. A solid shaft of luminosity erupts from the lantern. It is a physical thing, a bar of gold cutting through the black atmosphere. It is not like the diffused glow of a campfire. It is a beam, a searchlight 2,000 years before the invention of electricity. Travel with that beam now. Fly with the photons. We leave the tower, soaring out over the crashing surf of the island, over the diamond-tipped waves of the dark harbour. We fly for miles, moving instantly through the void. 10 miles out, 20 miles out, 30 miles out. We are on the deck of a Roman grain ship. The night is absolute. The captain is anxious, gripping the railing, his eyes straining against the crushing blackness. He knows the coast is near, but where? Is it the rocks? Is it the shoals? The sea is a monster in the dark, and then it appears. It is not a flicker. It is not a distant spark. It is a hole punched in the night. A low, pulsating star sits on the horizon. It is impossibly bright, brighter than Sirius, brighter than Venus. It casts a long, shimmering reflection on the water, a road of gold leading straight to safety. The Pharos, the sailors whisper. The tension drains from the ship. They are no longer lost in the infinite dark. They are tethered to the city. The mirror has done its work. It has taken the local heat of a bonfire and translated it into a universal message. It has turned the night into day. For the sailors, that beam is the finger of a god pointing the way home. They do not see the soot-stained men. They do not smell the burning resin. They do not know about the oil and the pumice. They only see the miracle, the impossible star that lives on the edge of the world, burning with a cold, reflected fire that promises they will live to see the morning. We have stood in the heat of the fire, and we have looked into the blinding silver of the mirror. But now, let us turn our backs to the blaze. Let us walk to the edge of the circular colonnade, gripping the cold, red granite pillars, and look down. From this height, the world changes. The roar of the bonfire behind us becomes a rhythmic, rushing wind in our ears. But below lies a tapestry of silence. We are the eye in the sky, the highest point in the known world. We are the lighthouse, and for a moment we see what the gods see. Spread out beneath us, glowing faintly in the moonlight, is the dream of Alexander made stone. The city, Alexandria. It is a grid of jewels laid out on a velvet cloth. From up here, the chaotic noise of the streets, the shouting merchants, the rattling chariot wheels, the barking dogs, does not reach us. It is filtered out by the altitude, leaving only a visual hush. We see the mathematical perfection of city planning. The broad canopic way cuts through the centre like a ribbon of pale limestone, flanked by shadows that we know are colonnades. To the south, we see the outline of the Mausoleum, the great library. It sleeps in the dark. From this distance, it looks like a hive of wisdom. We cannot hear the scratching of the quills or the rustle of the 700,000 scrolls, but we can smell the faint, dry scent of papyrus drifting up on the warm thermals. It is the smell of old thoughts, of dried reeds and ink, rising to meet the smell of our burning resin. And there, hugging the harbour, is the royal quarter, the Bruchion. It is a sprawl of marble terraces, lush gardens, and pools that catch the reflection of our beam. We can see the dark squares of the palace courtyards, where peacocks sleep in the tamarisk trees and guards lean on their spears, watching the same moon we are touching. The palace is a place of secrets, of whispered conspiracies and silk curtains. But up here, the lighthouse is indifferent. It shines on the roof of the king and the roof of the beggar with the same unwavering intensity. We are the silent guardian of the city's sleep. We watch the torches of the night watchmen moving like fireflies through the alleys of the Rakotis district. We see the fishing boats leaving the harbour at dawn, tiny specks of wood venturing out into the vast, terrifying blue. We are the witnesses. The city changes, grows, breathes and dies, but the tower remains. Time flows differently here in the clouds. Years compress into moments. The seasons are marked not by calendars, but by the changing direction of the wind and the flags on the masts of the approaching ships. And then, one day, the flags change. It is the year 48 before the Common Era. The air is thick with a different kind of tension. The harbour waters, usually a chaotic dance of trade ships, fat-bellied grain carriers, sleek Phoenician traders, become orderly. Look out to the horizon. Do you see them? They are dark shapes cutting through the white caps. They do not sail with the organic, billowing grace of the merchant vessels. They move with a terrifying, synchronized rhythm. Stroke, stroke, stroke. The Roman galleys. From our vantage point in the clouds, we do not see the violence. We do not hear the clash of steel or the shouts of the legions. We see only the geometry of power. The ships are long, sharp and aggressive. They look like grey wolves entering a pen of sheep. The sunlight glints off the bronze beaks at their prows, designed to smash and sink. We see the man they call Caesar standing on the deck of the lead ship. From 300 feet up, he is just a speck, a grain of sand in a red cloak. He looks up at us. He must crane his neck, shielding his eyes against the sun, to see the top of the tower. Does he feel small? Even a conqueror must feel the crushing weight of insignificance when standing in the shadow of the Pharos. The lighthouse does not judge. It does not dim its light for the invader. It welcomes the Roman hulls just as it welcomes the grain barges. The great mirror catches the sun and signals the entrance to the great harbour. We watch as the foreign ships glide past the breakwater, their oars retracting like the legs of a centipede. We watch them drop anchor, the heavy splash silent from this height. The city holds its breath. We can feel the stillness rising from the streets below. The library locks its doors. The palace guards tighten their grip. But the wind up here keeps blowing, cold and indifferent, and the automata keep turning, marking the hours of a history that is being rewritten below. And then there is the night of the return. The city is occupied. The Roman general sits in the palace of the Ptolemy. The rightful queen is in exile, banished to the desert. The harbour is blockaded, but the lighthouse sees everything. It is a moonless night. The sea is a sheet of black glass, merging with the sky. Our beam cuts a frantic golden path through the darkness, searching, sweeping, and there, slipping through the shadows of the great limestone blocks of the harbour wall, we see it, a tiny boat, a skiff, barely large enough for 2 men. It moves silently, oars wrapped in cloth to muffle the sound of the water. It does not carry soldiers. It carries a single passenger, wrapped in a bundle of fabric, a rug, or perhaps a sack of bedding. From the lantern room, the keepers are too busy feeding the fire to notice. But the tower itself, the stone and the spirit of the place, watches. We see the boat dock at the foot of the palace steps, hidden from the Roman sentries. We see the bundle being carried ashore. It is Cleopatra, the last of the pharaohs. She does not return with armies. She does not return with the blare of trumpets or the thunder of chariots. She returns in silence, smuggled like contraband under the nose of the empire. We watch as the figure emerges from the bundle inside the palace wall. We cannot hear the words spoken between her and Caesar. We cannot see the spark that ignites between them, a spark that will burn cities and topple dynasties. We only see the quiet mechanics of fate. The lighthouse understands this. We understand that history often turns on the smallest of hinges, a boat in the dark, a hidden queen, a single conversation. While the rest of Alexandria sleeps, unaware that the world is tilting on its axis, we keep watch. We see the lights in the palace windows stay lit late into the night. We see the Roman galleys shifting at their moorings. We see the dawn breaking over the delta, painting the white city in hues of rose and gold. For centuries we have stood here. We have seen the funeral processions of kings winding down the canopic way. We have seen the riots that stained the cobblestones red. We have seen the scholars arguing in the gardens of the museum. We are the silent archive. The library below stores the scrolls of ink and papyrus, but we, the pharaohs, store the memories of light and shadow. We have seen the rise of the Greeks, and now we see the shadow of Rome lengthening across the water. The fire behind us crackles, hungry and oblivious. The mirror throws its beam out to the indifferent sea, and we, the view from the clouds, simply watch, waiting for the next ship, the next conqueror, the next storm to roll in from the endless blue horizon. To understand the true power of the pharaohs, we must leave the stone and the fire. We must leave the city and the land entirely. We must cast ourselves out into the void that it was built to conquer. Come with me, let us drift away from the solid earth, miles out into the churning indigo expanse of the Mediterranean. It is the deep of the night. The year is 250 before the Common Era. You are no longer standing on firm ground. You are crouching on the heaving deck of a merchant galley, a vessel laden with amphorae of wine from Rhodes and cedar from Lebanon. Close your eyes and feel the motion. Up and down, up and down. It is a relentless, sickening rhythm. The sea here is not a flat blue surface, it is a landscape of moving hills and valleys, black as obsidian under the moonless sky. The darkness is absolute. It presses against your eyes, a heavy, suffocating weight. There is no horizon. The black water merges seamlessly with the black sky, trapping you in a sphere of nothingness. The sounds of the ship are the only tether to reality, and they are the sounds of strain. Listen to the groan of the timber ribs. Creak, moan, crack. The ship feels alive, suffering under the assault of the waves. Listen to the wind whistling through the rigging, a high, thin shriek that cuts through the damp wool of your cloak. The sail, a heavy canvas square, snaps violently. Whack, like a whip cracking in the dark. You are cold. It is a wet, seeping cold that has settled into your marrow. Is sticky with a layer of dried salt that pulls and itches. Your lips are cracked from the brine. There is a taste in your mouth, metallic, stale, the taste of fear. For a sailor in the ancient world, the night was not a time of rest. It was a time of terror. To be lost here, even by a few degrees, meant missing the delta. It meant crashing into the invisible shoals we spoke of earlier. It meant death in the dark water. You grip the rough wood of the gunwale, your knuckles white. You are staring into the abyss, straining for a sign, for anything that suggests the world still exists beyond this wooden shell. And then you see it. At first you think it is a trick of the tired mind, a phantom spark in the corner of your eye. You blink, rubbing the salt from your lashes. You look again. There, low on the southern horizon, floating in the endless black, is a star. But it is not like the other star. Look up for a moment at the heavens, the stars of the constellations, Orion, the Bear, the Dog Star. They are cold. They are distant, diamond hard points of light that shivering in the atmosphere. They twinkle, they dance, they are indifferent to you. But this new star, this star does not move, it does not twinkle, it burns. It is a solid, unwavering puncture in the night. It has a warmth to it, a golden amber hue that speaks of fire, of resin, of human hands. It sits there, fixed and resolute, pinning the chaotic, shifting ocean to a single point of certainty. The Pharos. A breath you didn't know you were holding escapes your chest. The relief is physical. It washes over you like warm water, loosening the knot of anxiety in your stomach. That light is 30 miles away, yet it feels intimate. It feels like a promise. Imagine the physics of this moment. That beam of light has traveled from the great mirror, flying instantly across leagues of tossing water to strike your retina. It is a thread of gold connecting you to safety. As the hours pass, the star grows. It does not rise like a celestial body. It swells. The single point of light begins to resolve into a shape. You can see the beam now, a distinct shaft of illumination cutting through the sea mist. It looks like a solid bar of gold resting on the water. The sailors around you begin to stir. The silence of fear is replaced by the low murmur of anticipation. The light, they whisper. It is a prayer and a navigation point in one. The captain barks orders, his voice competing with the wind, but there is no panic in his tone anymore. He knows where he is. The Pharos has captured him. The ship adjusts its course, turning its prow toward that burning eye. You are no longer drifting in a void, you are being reeled in. As we draw closer, the sensory world begins to shift again. The violent, rhythmic heaving of the open sea begins to soften. We are entering the lee of the land. The waves lose their white crests, turning into long, rolling swells that push the ship gently forward. The light is towering above us now. It is blindingly bright, dazzling the eyes, casting long, dancing shadows of the rigging onto the deck. We can hear the faint sound of the warning bell carried on the wind, and perhaps the deep, mournful note of the bronzed tritons. We pass the point of the island, we slip past the great breakwater, and suddenly, silence. We have entered the great harbour. The transition is shocking. The howling wind is cut off by the city walls. The churning water becomes a placid black mirror, reflecting the torchlight of the docks. The ship glides, carried only by its momentum, the sails furled, the oars resting. Close your eyes and inhale. The smell of the sea, the raw, fishy ozone smell is gone. It is instantly replaced by the perfume of a metropolis. Breathe it in deeply. It is complex and heavy. You smell the smoke of 1,000 hearth fires burning olive wood. You smell the baking bread from the ovens of the royal bakery, a yeast-heavy, comforting scent that makes your mouth water after weeks of hardtack. You smell the sharp, exotic tang of spices, cinnamon from the east, pepper from India, frankincense from Arabia, waiting in the warehouses on the quay. You smell the damp limestone of the harbour walls and the faint, sweet rot of the Nile mud. It is the smell of civilization. The ship drifts toward its berth. You hear the voices of men on the docks, dock workers shouting in Greek, Egyptian, Hebrew, Aramaic. It is a babble of humanity, a stark contrast to the lonely whistle of the wind at sea. Splash! The heavy iron anchor plunges into the calm water of the harbour floor. The ship shudders and comes to a halt. The wood stops creaking. The world stops moving. You are safe. Look up one last time. Directly above you, looming like a mountain of white stone against the stars, stands the tower. From this angle you cannot see the fire, only the glow radiating from the lantern, creating a halo in the mist. It stands there, silent and massive, the guardian that pulled you from the jaws of the deep. You step onto the gangplank. The wood is steady under your feet. You walk down to the stone of the key. The ground is hard, immovable, permanent. You fall to your knees, not in prayer to Poseidon, but in gratitude to the stone, to the mirror, to the fire. You have walked through the valley of the shadow of death, and the light has guided you home. This was the gift of the Pharos, not just a marvel of engineering, but the gift of another morning. Time is a patient artist. It works not with a brush, but with the wind. We have watched the lighthouse rise in a storm of dust and ambition. We have seen it shine with the arrogance of a new empire. But now we must settle in for the long wait. We must speed up the clock of the world until the years blur into a grey haze and watch what the elements do to the works of man. Stand at the base of the great square tier again. The air is still thick with salt, but the energy has changed. The frantic industry of the early Ptolemies has faded. The shouts of the workers are gone. There is only the sound of the wind. Hiss, scour, hiss. It is the breath of the desert meeting the breath of the sea. Every gust that hits the north face of the tower carries 1,000,000 microscopic chisels, grains of quartz sand and dried salt crystals. They strike the white limestone surface with invisible violence, day after day, century after century. Watch the plaster. Do you remember the smooth white skin that covered the dedication plaque? The skin that bore the name of the king in letters of gold. It is tired now. The sun has baked it brittle. The rain has seeped into its pores, expanding and contracting with the seasons, creating a spider web of hairline fractures. Crack, flake, a piece of plaster no bigger than a man's hand detaches from the wall. It falls silently, tumbling down the side of the monument to shatter on the pavement below. It is the first leaf falling in the autumn of the tower, then another, then a slab. The gold paint, once so brilliant it blinded the eye, has dulled to a dirty ochre, peeling away like dead skin. The name of the king is suffering. The P of Ptolemy is jagged. The L is washed away by a winter storm. The vanity of the crown is dissolving into the white dust that coats the causeway. And then the secret begins to emerge. It happens slowly, revealed by the stripping away of the false face. As the soft plaster erodes, the hard reality beneath fights its way to the surface. Look up at the wall. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the masonry, where the smooth artificial stone has fallen away. Something dark and rough is visible. It is granite, the true bone of the tower. The wind cannot hurt this stone, the sand cannot scratch it. The letters carved by Sostratos, the architect, have been waiting in the dark for hundreds of years, protected by the very lie that concealed them. Watch as the final piece of the king's name crashes to the ground. The mask is gone. The sunlight hits the deep, sharp grooves of the original inscription for the first time in centuries. The shadows pool in the carved letters, making them stand out black against the grey rock. Sostratos. The name rings out across history. The king is dust. His dynasty has fallen. His bloodline has ended in the bite of an asp and the triumph of Rome. But the architect remains. The man who understood the stone, who understood that plaster is for the living but granite is for the dead, has won his wager with time. Travellers standing at the base of the tower look up. They do not see a monument to a dead monarch anymore. They read the name of a man from Cnidus. They read the dedication to the saviour gods. Not the royals, but the twins, Castor and Pollux, the true friends of the sailor. The lie has eroded. The truth stands naked and invincible against the sky. But while the stone remembers, the fire forgets. We must ascend one last time to the lantern. The climb is harder now. The steps of the spiral ramp are worn down in the center, scooped out by the millions of hooves that have walked this path. The air in the shaft smells of old damp and neglect. We reach the summit, the crown of fire. But the roar is gone. The empire that fed this beast is crumbling. The meticulous logistics, the caravans of wood from the interior, the jars of precious resin, the armies of slaves have broken down. The veins of the world are drying up. Look at the fire now. It is no longer the terrifying white-hot inferno that turned night into day. It is a sullen, smoky pile of embers. The wood is green and unseasoned. It hisses and pops, sending thick plumes of grey smoke to choke the lantern room. The keepers are few. They are old men, huddled in their cloaks, their faces etched with the despair of those who serve a dying god. They toss a few logs onto the grate, but they hoard the fuel. There is no resin tonight. The treasury is empty. And look at the great mirror, the most tragic sight of all. The polishing of the bronze has ceased. The oil and the pumice are gone. The metal has been left to the mercy of the salt air. Reach out and touch the surface. It is no longer a pool of liquid silver. It is rough. It is pitted. A dull green patina of verdigris has crept over the face of the disk like a disease. It does not catch the light anymore, it swallows it. The beam that once pierced the horizon for 30 miles has shrunk to a muddy glow, barely visible past the breakwater. The darkness is creeping back in. The sea, which had been pushed back by the lance of light, is reclaiming its territory. Out in the deep water, the sailors strain their eyes looking for the golden star, but they see only the faint, intermittent flicker of a dying candle. The silence of the coast returns, the warning bells are cracked, the automata have rusted into stillness, their bronze fingers pointing nowhere. The Pharos still stands, a mountain of stone, but its soul is leaving. It is becoming a tomb. The light is failing, and the long night of the ancient world is beginning to fall. The stone had won its battle against the wind. It had won its battle against the salt. It had even won its battle against the vanity of kings. But there is an enemy against which no stone, however massive, can stand. That enemy is the earth itself. We must travel to the morning of July 21st in the year 365. The dawn is breaking over the Mediterranean. The sky is a bruised purple, lightening to a pale, sickly yellow. The air is heavy, still, and utterly silent. The birds are not singing. The dogs in the streets of Alexandria are not barking. They are whining, low and guttural, pressing their bellies against the cool dirt. They know. The animals always know first. Deep beneath the indigo floor of the sea, miles south of the island of Crete, two massive tectonic plates, the skin of the planet, are locked in a wrestler's embrace. They have been pushing against each other for centuries, building up a tension that defies comprehension. The rock is screaming in a frequency too low for human ears to hear. And then the rock snaps. Rumble. It begins not as a sound, but as a nausea, a vibration that travels through the bedrock under the sea, racing toward the delta at thousands of miles an hour. It hits the limestone ridge of Alexandria, the ground which has been the one constant certainty in the life of the city, becomes liquid. Stand at the base of the Pharos. The sensation is terrifying. The earth does not just shake, it rolls. It heaves like the chest of a dying giant. The massive blocks of the square base, glued together with molten lead, groan in protest, grind, shriek, pop. You can hear the lead ties stretching, snapping inside the masonry. The sound is deafening, a cacophony of grinding stone, deeper than thunder, louder than war. The causeway, the Stadion, ripples like a ribbon whipped in the wind. The water in the harbour recoils, sucked backward by the violence of the shock, exposing the muddy, debris-strewn bottom of the bay before rushing back in a catastrophic wall of foam. But look up, look to the sky. The tower is whipping. The architects built it to withstand the horizontal pressure of the wind, but they could not build it to withstand the vertical hammer blow of the quake. The tower is acting like a whip. The base moves inches, but 300 feet up, the movement is amplified into feet. The octagon sways violently, the bronze tritons clinging to their pedestals. But the cylinder, the lantern, it cannot hold. We are watching the death of a star. Focus your eyes on the third tier, the circular colonnade, the crown of the lighthouse. As the shock wave travels up the spine of the tower, it reaches the neck. The oscillation becomes too great. The structural integrity fails. Crack. It is a sound that splits the sky. The red granite pillars of the lantern shear off at their bases. The roof, the heavy conical dome topped with the statue of Zeus, loses its support. Time seems to slow down. The top of the lighthouse detaches. For a fraction of a second it hangs suspended in the air, a castle in the clouds defying gravity, and then it falls, and with it falls the soul of the machine. The great mirror, watch it closely. This masterpiece of bronze, this perfectly polished curve that has reflected the sun and the fire for 600 years, slides from its mountings. It catches the morning light one last time, a chaotic, spinning flash of gold as it tumbles into the abyss. It does not fall silently. It screams as it slices through the air. Whoosh. And then the impact. Boom. It is not a splash. It is a collision of worlds. The massive blocks of the lantern, the statue of the god, and the great mirror smash into the stone apron of the island and the shallow waters surrounding it. The sound is not just heard, it is felt in the teeth, in the bones. A cloud rises. A massive, choking plume of white limestone dust and pulverized mortar erupts from the base of the tower. It billows outward, swallowing the island, swallowing the harbour. The smell is distinct. It is the smell of flint, of crushed rock, of dry ancient earth suddenly exposed to the air. Where the mirror hit, there is no survival. The bronze acts like glass. It shatters. The perfect curve that could focus a flame into a beam is reduced to twisted shards of metal, jagged and useless, sinking into the murky water. The eye of Alexandria has been gouged out. The dust hangs over the harbour for days. It coats the ships, the streets, the rooftops in a ghostly shroud of white powder. It is the funeral ash of the wonder. When the dust finally settles, when the wind clears the air, the city looks toward the island, and they see the horror, the stump. The square base still stands, scarred and cracked. The octagon is damaged, half ruined, a jagged tooth pointing at the sky. But the top is gone. The elegant proportions are decapitated. There is no statue, there is no roof, there is no fire, And there is the silence. This is not the quiet of a library. This is the silence of a missing limb. For centuries, the people of Alexandria and the sailors on the sea lived with the subconscious hum of the lighthouse's presence, the visual noise of its light, the auditory noise of its industry. Now there is a void. Go out to sea one last time. Travel 10 miles out into the Mediterranean night. The captain stands on the deck. He looks south. He looks for the golden bar on the horizon. He looks for the comfort of the guiding star. There is nothing. There is only the crushing, indifferent blackness of the universe. The separation between sea and sky is lost again. The dangerous coast has returned to its primal state, invisible and deadly. The sailors feel a panic rising in their chests. The world has shrunk. Without the light, the range of their safety has collapsed. They are no longer tethered to the city. They are alone in the dark. The lighthouse does not die all at once. It dies in stages. The earthquake of 365 was the executioner, but later tremors in the year 956, in 1303, in 1323, would come to pick at the bones. They would shake down the Octagon. They would tumble the remaining stones of the square base into the sea. But the true death happened the moment the mirror shattered, the moment the light went out. The ruin would stand for centuries more, a quarry for sultans, a fortress for soldiers. The stones would be dragged away to build the citadel of Qaitbay, recycled into walls and towers that looked inward, toward the land rather than outward, toward the sea. But the magic was gone. The conversation between the earth and the horizon had ended. The Library of Whispers remembers the light, but the sea remembers only the darkness that returned to reclaim its own. The silence has lasted for 100 years. The dust from the great collapse has long since settled into the sediment of the harbour, and the screams of the falling bronze have faded from the memory of the living. We are drifting now through the middle of the 14th century, and the island of Pharos has become a graveyard. Walk with me through the wreckage. It is a landscape of melancholy beauty. What was once a needle piercing the clouds is now a chaotic hill of debris. It looks like the aftermath of a war between the gods. Massive blocks of white limestone, each weighing as much as a herd of elephants, lie tumbled in heaps. They are no longer part of a seamless white skin. They are individual boulders, their edges softened by the wind, their surfaces pitted by the relentless salt spray. Nature has begun the slow work of reclamation. Look closely at the crevices between the fallen stones. Life is stubborn. Tufts of coarse seagrass have taken root in the mortar dust, their green blades shivering in the wind. Small yellow flowers bloom in the shadows of the ruined Octagon, feeding on the minerals of the broken tower. The sea, always hungry, laps at the edges of the ruin. Slap, recede, slap, recede. The water has swallowed the lower apron of the island. In the shallows you can see the dark shapes of submerged columns, red granite pillars that once held the dome of the lantern, now lying on the sandy bottom like sleeping giants. Fish swim through the spaces where the sacred fire once burned. Crabs scuttle over the shards of the inscription that once proclaimed safety to the world. Travelers come here, but they do not come to marvel, they come to mourn. The great traveller Ibn Battuta stood here just as we are standing. He looked at the ruin and found he could not even enter the doorway. The entrance was choked with rubble. The path to the sky was broken. The Pharos had become a word for something that used to be, a ghost story told to sailors to explain why the nights were so dark. The island was a place of jagged shadows and wind-whistling emptiness, a testament to the fact that everything, even the light, eventually falls. But history does not tolerate a vacuum. The strategic value of this rock did not vanish with the tower. The geography remained. The threat from the sea remained. And in the year 1477, a new power arrived to claim the ruin. Hear the change in the soundscape. The lonely whistling of the wind is broken by the rhythmic thudding of hooves and the jingle of silver harnesses. Clip-clop, clip-clop. A procession is winding its way across the repaired causeway. It is a river of colour flowing toward the grey island, robes of silk in vibrant saffron, emerald and crimson, turbans of white linen wound tight against the heat. At the head of this column rides a man of iron will, Sultan al-Ashraf Qaitbay. He is a Mamluk, a soldier king. He was born a slave on the steppes, bought and sold and rose through the ranks by the strength of his sword and the sharpness of his mind. He does not look at the world with the eyes of a poet or a mathematician. He looks with the eyes of a general. He dismounts. His boots crunch on the limestone grit. The air is thick with the smell of the royal entourage, rosewater, sweat, leather, and the musk of expensive horses. He stands amidst the rubble of the lighthouse. He looks north toward the endless blue line of the Mediterranean. He does not see the romance of the ruin. He sees a threat. The Ottoman Turks are rising in the north. Their fleets are hungry. Alexandria is the jewel they wish to pry from his crown. He kicks a piece of white limestone with his boot. It is solid. It is heavy. It is perfect. He turns to his architects. He does not whisper. He commands. He points to the mountain of fallen stone. He points to the red granite pillars lying in the weeds. Here, he says, build me a shield. He does not want a tower to guide ships in. He wants a fortress to keep ships out. The purpose of the island is about to flip. The beacon of welcome is about to become the fist of defiance. And so the great recycling begins. This is not a new quarry opening in the desert. This is cannibalization. The lighthouse is not being removed, it is being transformed. It is a transmigration of the soul of the stone. Listen to the sounds of the construction. It is different from the days of the Ptolemy. The language shouted by the foreman is Arabic, not Greek. The tools are different, but the stone is the same. Scrape, thud. Watch the workers as they wrestle with the massive rectangular blocks. These are the very stones that Sostratos ordered from the quarries of Tura nearly 2,000 years ago. They have seen the face of Alexander in their dreams. Now they feel the hands of the Mamluks. They are dragged from the pile, cleaned of the old mortar, and restacked. But the geometry is different. The lighthouse was a creature of the air, tall, slender, reaching for the gods. The fortress is a creature of the earth, squat, broad, thick-walled, hugging the ground. The walls of the citadel of Qaitbay begin to rise. They are formidable. They are built to withstand cannon fire, not just the wind. But look closely at the masonry. Do you see that lintel over the doorway of the mosque inside the fort? It is made of red granite. It is polished, round, and massive. That is a piece of the lantern. That pillar once stood 300 feet in the air, surrounding the fire. It once felt the heat of the burning resin. Now it serves as a header for a door, cool and shadowed, listening to the prayers of the soldiers. Walk along the outer walls. The white limestone blocks are weathered, pitted with the memories of ancient storms. They are the skin of the pharaohs, rearranged into a new mosaic. The lighthouse is not gone. It is hiding in plain sight. It has been folded into the walls of the fort. The fort of Qaitbay is a puzzle box made of the wonder. As the fortress nears completion, the island changes again. It is no longer a wild ruin. It is a military machine. Cannons are hoisted onto the ramparts, their black muzzles pointing out to sea, sitting in the same sightlines where the automata once pointed their bronze fingers. The transformation is complete. The star is buried. The fire is extinguished forever, replaced by the flash of gunpowder. But if you stand in the courtyard of the citadel today, and you press your hand against the cool white stone, you are touching the same atoms that guided the grain ships of Rome. You are touching the ambition of the ancients, repurposed for the wars of the medieval world. The shape has changed, the height is lost, but the bones of the giants still hold the island against the sea. We have walked the ramparts of the fortress, and we have touched the recycled bones of the tower in the walls of the citadel. But not every stone was saved. Not every block was lifted by the Mamluk cranes to serve the wars of men. There were those that escaped when the great earthquake shook the earth in the 14th century, When the lantern sheared and the mirror screamed, thousands of tons of masonry did not fall onto the island. They were thrown wide. They were cast out beyond the edge of the land into the welcoming, dark embrace of the sea. Come with me now. We must leave the air entirely. We must leave the sun and the wind and the dust. We are going down, submerged. The first sensation is the cold. It is an immediate, enveloping chill that presses against your skin. The sounds of the world above, the call to prayer from the minarets, the honking of cars on the corniche, the chatter of tourists are instantly severed. Glub, glub, glub. The surface acts as a barrier, sealing us in a liquid tomb. We are drifting down through the water of the eastern harbour. It is not the crystal clear blue of the open ocean. It is a heavy, nutrient-rich green. The light filters down in shifting, ethereal shafts, dancing with particles of silt and sand. It is a twilight world suspended in a permanent state of dusk. We descend 20 feet, 30 feet. The pressure builds against your ears, a gentle squeeze. The floor of the harbour rises to meet us. It is a landscape of grey sand and sediment, soft and undulating like a desert dune. And there, rising from the gloom like sleeping leviathans, are the lost ones. Here lie the blocks that were too heavy to move. Here lie the pieces that the Sultan's engineers could not salvage. They are massive, blocks of granite weighing 70 tons, resting at odd angles, half buried in the sand. They do not look like ruins here. They look like a natural geological formation, a mountain range that has been drowned. Nature has claimed them. Look closely at the surface of the red granite. It is no longer smooth. It is crusted with life. Barnacles, small and sharp, have built their cities on the faces of Pharos. Green algae coats the stone like a velvet shroud, swaying gently in the current. A school of small silver fish darts through the gap between two fallen lintels, flashing like coins in the dim light. The silence here is profound. It is not an empty silence. It is a pressurized, heavy stillness. The stones are sleeping. They have been resting here, undisturbed for 600 years, rocked gently by the surge of the winter storms, dreaming of the fire they once held. Time moves differently in the deep. Centuries drift by like the sediment in the water. But then a new sound invades the silence. Hiss, inhale, bubble. It is a mechanical, rhythmic breathing. It is the sound of the modern age returning to the site of the wonder. A beam of artificial light cuts through the green, murky water. A diver hovers in the gloom. He is weightless, a strange aquatic creature in a black rubber skin. trailing a stream of silver bubbles that race toward the surface. Watch him as he swims over the dune. He is searching. He is mapping the memory of the floor. The beam of his flashlight sweeps across the sand. It hits a shape that is not a rock. It is too smooth, too curved. He kicks his fins, drifting closer, his hand reaching out to brush away the layer of fine grey silt. A face emerges from the dark. It is a sphinx. It is one of the guardians that once sat at the base of the tower, watching the ships arrive. Now it watches the fish. Its eyes are wide, staring blankly into the water. Its nose is chipped, perhaps from the fall, perhaps from the earthquake. But the majesty remains. The diver runs a gloved hand over the cheek of the statue. The stone is cold, slimy with organic matter, but beneath the sea growth, the hard granite of Aswan is eternal. To the left of the Sphinx, the light reveals something else, a column. It is like a fallen redwood tree made of stone, stretching out into the darkness. It is one of the pillars from the lantern room. This stone once stood 300 feet in the air. It once felt the heat of the resin fire. It was once wrapped in smoke and wind. Now it lies horizontally in the mud, a fallen giant in a watery grave. The diver floats above it, tiny in comparison. The scale of the ruin is terrifying. Down here, without the distraction of the sky or the city, you can feel the sheer, crushing weight of the ambition of the ancients. You can see the dovetailed joints cut into the blocks, the lead clamps still holding fast against the corrosion of the salt. There are thousands of pieces here, a graveyard of architecture, shattered obelisks with hieroglyphs that are slowly being erased by the sea, fragments of the colossal statue of Ptolemy, a hand the size of a man, a foot the size of a boat. They are scattered like toys left by a careless child. This is the true museum of the Pharos. The fortress above. Fortress is a mask. The sea below is the truth. The water has preserved the catastrophe exactly as it happened. It is a frozen moment of destruction, held in the amber of the Mediterranean. We must surface now. The air in the tanks is running low. We kick upward, leaving the silent sphinxes and the sleeping pillars behind. We break the surface, gasp, and the noise of the world rushes back in. The sun is setting over modern Alexandria. The sky is a blaze of purple and gold, mirroring the colours that the automata once watched. The lights of the corniche are flickering on, thousands of electric bulbs illuminating the curve of the bay. Cars rush past, people laugh in cafes. The city is alive and vibrant. The lighthouse is gone. There is no massive tower dominating the horizon. There is no beam of fire cutting through the night to guide the container ships that wait offshore. The skyline is lower, humbler, but listen to the wind coming off the sea. The story remains. The light of the Pharos did not just vanish. It went into the minds of men. It went into the books of the historians, the sketches of the travellers, the dreams of the architects who built every lighthouse that followed. Every tower that stands on a rocky coast today, sweeping its beam across the water, is a child of Alexandria. Every sailor who sighs with relief at the sight of a distant flash is inheriting the legacy of Sostratos. The stones are still there, some in the fort, some in the sea. The physics of the mirror are still true. The mathematics of the ramp are still sound. We have walked its halls, smelled its smoke, felt its heat, and watched it fall. We have rebuilt it in the theatre of our minds. It stands now, tall and white and blazing, in the library of your memory. It is safe there. The earthquake cannot touch it, the sea cannot drown it. As long as we whisper its name, the Pharos still burns. The fire is out, the water is calm. The city sleeps under a different set of stars. Rest now, traveller. The journey is done. The light has guided you home, and so the great beacon dims, and the final page is turned. We close the heavy book, leaving the ancient waves behind. The story is over, and the silence returns to the shelves. You can let go now. The library is safe, and the night is yours, just yours. There is no need to be awake any longer. If you found peace in this light tonight, stay within these walls, subscribe to our quiet world, and we will find another book tomorrow night. But for now, just drift, sleep, good night.